Hey friends. So, something showed up this morning as I was meditating, as it frequently does, and I've been looking at this question of where my life is on track, where my life feels like it's maybe not so fully on track, and what I can actually be doing to bring myself into greater alignment. And it's this, there's something about the prospect of that feels torturous. And I know that the process of that will not be torturous. It'll actually most likely be very satisfying. But there's something in there that gives me this sense of, oh God, I don't want to have to face that. I'll face anything but that. And that tells me, that's always my first clue, that there's some kind of shame barrier or shame membrane, shame entity at play. Because if the prospect of bringing our lives into alignment creates a feeling of distress, something must be off. That doesn't make sense. There's something not lining up. Either what we envision that alignment to look like is somehow off. We have an idea of alignment, of living in alignment, and a lot of times, if we sort of have a moralistic way of seeing how we should be living, and we feel the weight of the shoulds, and we imagine that alignment somehow means that, then that can create a kind of revulsion from the prospect. But on the other hand, alternately, there can be a sense of just a subconscious sense that we might have to leave something behind that actually we've been relying on for our self-image, for our self-esteem, for our security for a long time. And so even if we imagine a form of alignment that's really beautiful and really attractive to us, there's this subconscious contraction that happens whenever we think about actually doing it. And I think that I'm more in that category. My experience is a little more of that second type that I just described. And one of the things that has showed up really specifically in several conversations now with various people is that I have this strange attachment to being quote unquote creative and working creatively. And I've worked creatively all my life. There's virtually nothing I've done that hasn't been creative. And sometimes it's been as an artist, writing, creating, performing. Other times it's been as a teacher, which I also consider a deeply creative form of work. But particularly because I'm looking at developing a side of myself that is more the kind of teacher, mentor path, and particularly because I feel inclined in that direction already, and sort of have a sense that that's that I both have a gift for it and an enthusiasm for it. This is where I get into my kind of like my trigger, and because I think even after all this reflection and all this time, there's still something in me that feels like if I'm teaching, I'm kind of faking it. I'm not like a real artist if I'm teaching. And I know that that's nonsense. And I've many of the great artists that I've known and that I've had personal contact with, I've met them as teachers, and they also had these incredible artistic careers, creative careers in their own right. So it's not like intellectually I don't understand that that's nonsense. There's just part of me that subconsciously still thinks that that it knows the real criteria. It knows the real criteria that I'm going to be judged on. So it kind of skews, it unbalances my priority, it unbalances my center when I start to lean into those, when I start to change my priorities, and go more in the teaching direction, or even consider doing that. You know, as I've said, I've announced this several weeks ago that I'm really on the trail of making some changes to the way that I work, and getting really specific and really concrete, and really letting myself take on a project that I am fully committed to for the next period of time. I said 3 months initially. The more I reflect on it, the more I think it's going to have to be pretty substantially longer than that, but still a manageable amount of time that I can consider a kind of experimental phase. But anyway, something showed up this morning in conjunction with all of this, which is that one of the reasons I think I'm so attached to this idea of creativity is I've seen a lot of people in my life, a lot of people who've been influential in my life have been very creative thinkers, and almost the kind of cliche of like a creative person where they're kind of disorganized, but they're also brilliant and spontaneous, and it seems like the inspiration just flows out of them with almost no premeditation, or they just have a boundless reservoir of creative energy that just seems to overflow from them. And something in me, I think, this is a theory, I can't be completely 100% sure this is true, but something in me, I think, latched onto those images and started to think I'm kind of a, whatever my shame barrier is, whatever my kind of shame bubble is about, it is certainly a kind of introverted energy. So watching people be larger than life and sort of expressive, easily expressive, and joyfully expressive looked like freedom to me. It looked like that's what I want to be like. If I could be like that, then I would not have this shame in me. Then it would mean that I'm either over that shame, or it can't hurt me, or it can't keep me trapped. And as I was reflecting on this morning, what I realized is that even though there's a way in which pursuing creativity and allowing myself to be creative and developing my creative skill set has been deeply moving and it's created real movement in me, there's also a way in which there's always been an idea of what that was going to look like that was external to myself. And guess what? I never actually arrive there. I never get there. There's no there. I never actually get to the there. But I remain attached to it. And it's almost as though what I was thinking this morning is it's almost as though my fears, the process of doing some of the training and doing a lot of the work that I've done has involved facing my fears and facing my fear of that shame. But it's still been a strategy to somehow duck and dive away from my fears. There's a big difference between a strategy to evade my fears or even a strategy to overcome my fears. Some of these processes have involved leaning into and facing my fear, but I've been approaching them as though the purpose were to get over the fear, or like, once I do this, then I won't feel the fear anymore. And that also never happens. And what I was realizing this morning is, as long as there's an agenda to get rid of that fear, it's never going to work. Because it's like I'm trying to find a get out of jail free card. I'm trying to get away from the thing that it seems like has me by the throat. But the only way to really, really get it is to understand that it doesn't have me by the throat. But I would rather go into battle. There's part of me that would rather go into battle and learn that I can overcome the thing that has me by the throat. But all that time, I'm just kind of not resting into, it's not a real vulnerability. It's almost like a preemptive strike against my own vulnerability. It's like, I'll be vulnerable as long as I can preemptively defeat the thing that might be scary if I were vulnerable. Or something. Man, it's a labyrinth. But what also, one of the kind of zinging thoughts today was there's a big difference between a strategy to overcome our fears or to undo our fears, and an open-hearted gesture, an open-hearted movement into the world that inherently involves risk. That's a different kind of facing fear. Because now it's not about the fear. It's not about getting over my fear or facing my fear, eliminating my fear. It's about moving from the heart, letting fear be part of the picture and negotiating my own vulnerability in relationship to the world. That's a whole different thing. And I think for what I'm looking for and for where I'm, one of the things that I'm, one of the ways in which I think I can really, this examination is partly designed to give me a chance to understand some of this, because I really am ready to lean in into something that deeply, deeply nourishes me, that my entire heart is in, that allows me to be expressed and allows me to be of service, of value. And I can only do that from the heart. But it's not going to happen by overcoming my fear, leaning into my fear. That's not really where it's at. So yeah, a lot coming up these days. Thanks, folks. Much love. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.